Hello and welcome to CANNAMAntv. My name is Connor McLeod. In this interview, I get the chance to speak with author and founder of Cannabis for Children International, Alissa Lee. In this interview, we discuss Cannabis for Children International, its creation and manifesto, cannabis overuse and burnout, the cannabis industry and accountability, the barriers facing medicinal cannabis in the United States, and similarities between the United States and the United Kingdom regarding medicinal cannabis. Make sure and like and subscribe, and join me on Patreon, where you can help to build a stronger cannabis media platform. Now then, let's talk cannabis. Just to get us cracking then, Alissa, could you just give me background on yourself and why you became active in cannabis?
Well, I've actually been, I guess what is called the cannabis community. I've been in that for about 40 plus years, raised as a child, social exposures. And I'll tell you, I'm finding that people are exposed from friends and family more than anything. It's just been the way it is. And those social exposures do have some high risk to those, especially if you're introduced to that as a child. Mm. And so I was introduced to it around 10 years old with some friends, and I liked that. It made me feel better, it made me feel more comfortable. I don't know if I had ADHD or I was hyperactive or what it was, but for some reason it made me feel better. So in my mind, I would find opportunities to consume it and enjoy that feeling and that relaxation that would come about it. At that time, of course, it fully prohibited, so you didn't speak of it, you didn't talk about it, and it was definitely a black market operation of that nature. Again, those social exposures put me at high risk. When I was around 12, 13 years old, I had a friend that we used to walk around town and collect pop bottles. You could get 10 cents back on a pop bottle. And we would take a bunch of pop bottles and then we go buy some cannabis, and we consume it and things like that. That's kind of how we survived in the black market streets as children, but nonetheless, very creative with it. There was a police officer that started to offer it to us, the children. We had a small town there. And so we would go and find him. His street name was Soper. And Sopers were actually a street name for Quaaludes. Quaaludes are a sedative.
Okay.
But that's what he wanted to be called, a soper. So I remember going, he would allow us to go to his home to pick it up sometimes, And I remember going to his home one day with my friend. And when we walked in, there was a bunch of children there from my school and things like that. One boy was in the corner. There was Jack Daniels bottles and cigarette ashes and everything all around. And one boy in the corner had his pants down. And I thought, what's going on? This is really a scary situation. I was, very young. And my friend walked to the back room to get the cannabis with the police officer. And I went to the sliding patio door. And as I looked out that patio door, I was looking at the elementary school. Now, my problem being, you don't go and tell your parents about consuming cannabis and this cop, and you don't go to the school, and you can't go to the police officers. Now we're high risk. Now we're in an environment where open communication is so key and critical to stop something. But during that time, we couldn't speak. Mm-hmm. And if you did speak, it ended up that I was put in a juvenile detention center. And if someone would have told me at 13, 14 years old, as I was sitting in that juvenile detention center, that someday I would have an organization, a global organization called Cannabis for Children, nobody would have believed it. Nobody, they would say, you're losing your mind, you've smoked too much, this is your problem and you need reconditioned. But honestly, people were consuming it, all different people. And like I've said, I've been around it 40 years now. I've seen high risk. Yeah. We have children come up missing all the time. Mm-hmm. And it could be that they just went out to try to get a doobie, to get some cannabis, and they came across a predator, and that predator took them away. Mm-hmm. We've got to be real sincere about the risk factors that are put in place if we don't communicate openly, and we don't allow our children to openly communicate. They have to know where they can go. They have to talk to their parents, their care providers. They have to know law enforcement will help them if they need help. Yeah. It's not to put them outside anymore. and in a black market. We don't want that.
Yeah.
So that's part of our mission, is to change that approach and to bring that awareness forward, safety awareness.
Yeah.
We want our children to be educated.
Yeah.
And I think that our children can say, I watch these children now, Connor, and I'll tell you the truth. They're on the internet and they're cursing at 10, 12 years old. They're saying things about, having multiple preferences for sexuality at 12, 13 years old. So they should be able to talk about cannabis openly.
Yeah.
They should be able to talk about, questions and risks and their health and their nutrition, and all these things should be able to be talked about openly by our children.
Sorry, Alissa, that's actually a fantastic point if you think about it on a social level, that is very politically spoken about, the basis of transgenderism and gender identity, and there is obviously controversy based on the fact that the younger the child, the less that they feel accountable for their ability to identify, and yet this is still promoted. So exactly as you say, the fact that cannabis, a completely natural, benevolent, harmless, very well-being inducing substance, is not even spoken about or regarded. It's actually illegal, is absolutely absurd.
Right. So our children can't speak of this without being criticized for some kind of corruption, but yet, we're allowed to talk about all these other things openly with our children. And it's like, we have to really empower the people that are around cannabis, the people that, we want to get accountability out of the cannabis industry. All of the cannabis industry needs to be accountable. And someone said, well, you're kind of cutting off the guy that's making the good product, that doesn't have okay, but we've been doing that a long time. What we need is license. What we need is certificates of analysis. What we need is the science. We need to change it up a little bit because, we have to have the accountability in place. Yeah. And without people taking it very seriously, we won't. And I know the pharmaceutical industry is paying attention. That they're paying attention because there's benefits that are coming from the cannabis and the cannabinoids being applied that they want to know about. Yeah. So the more accountable our industry can be, the more cooperative we can be. Yeah. And someone said, oh, well, there's big pharma and there's cannabis. No, we're all on the same page. It's our healthcare. Yeah. Go try to get a tooth pulled without any type of pharmaceutical. You're going to hate that. Yeah. You're really going to wish you had a pharmaceutical in place. Yeah. So, there's good applications to these things, and they do save people's lives. And we have to have the same respect for the pharmaceutical industry as we want for the cannabis industry.
Well said, Alissa, and I think actually you hit the nail on the head when you said that it's about our healthcare. And if you're to look at the argument of substance recreational consumption generally, this is how the direction should be taken. It's about healthcare. It's about what humans ingest and how detrimental that will have in the long term to their health.
And I really take substance abuse and chemical dependency seriously because it is a strong factor in many people's lives. It starts in many different ways, whether it's alcohol, tobacco, pharmaceuticals, street drugs. The abuse comes from a behavior, a substance dependency can be withdrawn, but the behavior is what seems to be in place. So what we're doing now is we're trying to form an education group. We have MDs and we're asking for sociologists, psychologists to come in and help us look at that particular issue, substance abuse and chemical dependency, because what I've found as people have reached out and said, I want to go and stop being an alcoholic, and I'm hoping cannabis can help me not be the alcoholic anymore. How does that work? Yeah. It's basically finding the mental health care that's necessary too. To be in place. So I've literally have been on phones calling centers saying, hey, can we get somebody in to get treatment? Can we? And they say, oh, it's 3 to 6 months out. Okay, how are we going to approach this in a way that people can get serviced? That it's not a 10-day program and you're out and good luck to you type service. We need to really approach the mental health care of substance abuse and chemical dependency in a stronger way. It's been overlooked, and our system can handle this if we do it appropriately. You know, we've got a strong healthcare system. It's just like I said, when they refer people out to these centers and the center is booked up with the 12 positions it has for the 5-day program, you're not going to get more than 12 people in it. So where's the other resource? You know, we're just not doing enough. And
I think that
healthcare
sorry, on you go, Lisa.
Oh yeah, the healthcare industry and mental health care industry can come together and really expand on it and address it properly. It's not the fault of cannabis. Cannabis doesn't make you addicted. Cannabis will give you a substance in your body that your body's going to adjust to, but if it's grown well, and again, we can go all day on soil conditions and people's fertilizers and pesticides and on herbicides and all kinds of things that we need to watch in a grow. But if it's grown well, it's not harsh for your body to transition away from either. You know, we're not looking at the same thing as heroin when you withdraw from heroin. So seriously, to look at it as a step down process certainly would be a wonderful option to consider, but without the mental health care in place, that the problem may still continue, you know. And I'll give you an example. I have a gentleman, he has a PhD, and he reached out to me, and he's very young though. He said, you know, I wanted to use cannabis because I'm ADHD and autistic and, you know, it helped me through college and so forth, but now I consume it all day. I don't want to do anything else. I consume it all day. And I told him, I said, you know, when I was younger, we used to call that burnout. I don't know what they call it now, but, you know, it was just you kind of burn out. You don't do anything else. And really, that's your behavior that's changed. You're no longer getting up to go exercise. You're not getting up to go sightsee. You're making your preference to sit and consume it. And that's the behavior change that has happened. And so you got to address those things, and that's mental health care, right?
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad you actually said the word burnout, because I've obviously been in that situation numerous times where you feel just days and days have went by. You're like, Jesus, what's going on here? And that's why it's burnout, you know.
You're burning out, and seriously, you have to plan activities. You have to, you know, some people that are being treated seriously ill, they can't move and so forth, but what they do to not burn out from this treatment is to get into art or music. You know, they do science, watch the travel channels. They do things that expand their mind while they're consuming the cannabis care. And I think that's what gives them more value of the treatment, actually, is that they're not burnout. That they're not looking around going, oh my God, what's happening? All I do is, you know, have this and nothing else. They constantly are feeling some other happiness and joy.
There's actually that I think that strange correlation, and I think that the individuals who have actually been engaged with this, the research behind it, have actually stated that it's they've interpreted it backwards. So the correlation between cannabis makes people lazy. It's actually not the case. It's supposed to be along the lines of people that are relatively unemployed or have a tendency for laziness will choose cannabis as an alternative or as a primary consumption, because it kind of encourages those sensations. So it's not actually cannabis as it encourages, you know, laziness or lethargy or any of that stuff. It's the fact is that individuals that tend to be that anyway will consume it, and that's where the correlation lives.
Well, and you think about if you don't move something, you know, for several days very much, the metabolism drops. You're naturally not going to feel the same stamina that you did as you were physically active moving around. So you've literally changed the metabolism in your body by that we'll call it laziness, but it's self-indulgence basically.
Yeah, that's a good one for it. Self-indulgence. That phrase comes to mind where
you know, and you get overindulgent. What happens when you get overindulgent with pastry? You gain weight, right? Or alcohol, you pass out. Well, with cannabis, you just kind of go into this dull state of not doing much, and that's overconsumption. That's self-indulgent. And again, we're looking at a mental health situation. Would you consume something? Again, alcoholism is another great example. Would you consume something to the point that it's making you immobile, making you unable to function as you did? Well, then you need to deal with that issue. You really need to take that somewhere and say, why am I behaving this way towards myself?
Yeah,
Because I'm not satisfied with that. Burning out is not satisfactory.
Mm-hmm. Interestingly, actually, every single time when I've came to that situation in my life, it's always been because my social interaction has been at a lull. It's like I maybe have been unemployed at the time, or even work wasn't that great, or family situations, and it's always been a social element that's been the precursor to then the overconsumption. It's never actually been directly cannabis overconsumption itself, which I think is obviously it's negatively portrayed as that, which obviously is not the case. But so what actually what led to the formation then of the Cannabis for Children?
Well, as I started to see people bring out the products and so forth and do the retail marketing, it came on very fast. I mean, the internet is just plagued with cannabis products at this point all over the world. And yet there was very little education going on, very little communication about it to our families and our parents that were giving it to their small children. Yeah. Another thing that I heard is and seen, and I'm sure you've seen it too, is the children holding up the signs that say cannabis cured my cancer and those types of statements. Well, I've talked to several professors and we all kind of agree that the human immune system is what takes care of cancer. And we're very fortunate that we know that the cannabinoids are lowering the rates of the cancer progression. So they're lowering that. If we can lower that and we can increase the immune system, we got something going there. You see what I'm saying? There's a nice little possibility. But as far as curing it, I have held the hand of my very close friend for 30 plus years on her deathbed. And if I could have poured the cannabis down her body to make that stop, just, completely doused her, put her, filled her full of everything to save her life, I would have. And that's not how that works. Yeah. Unfortunately, that's not how cannabis works. Cannabis doesn't cure cancers that we know of. Believe me, there'd be a lot of people cured by now. But it does help mitigate the symptoms of the cancers. It does help people who are going through the radiation and chemotherapies recover from those treatments. There's a lot of applications there that are very valid for cannabis care. And more research is what we need. You know that, I know that. Yeah. If we can find something that attacks specific cancers that takes those out of the body because we've applied these cannabinoids, then let's do that already. Let's do it. I'm all for it. I don't think anybody would be against this at this point, but we have to have that science and research in place. So again, that's kind of what made me step up and say, hey, let's talk about this before we throw a bunch of children out there with signs of cures and all of a sudden people aren't going to their doctors. They're just consuming cannabis and now they've missed the testing necessary to catch it in time. Yeah. Because I'll tell you, Connor, I've seen a brain tumor and someone was given CBD. I said, please get to the neurologist. They finally got it. They got the testing done. The tumor was found, but it had grown so much for that period of them just trying CBD without physician care. Yeah. We have to have physicians on the same page as the patient. We have to just share that experience from the beginning. You want cannabis care, you take it, you say, hey, doc, this is what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing it. This is how it's helping me. This is, what I want to do. This is my choice as a patient. And the doctors have to accept that that's what you're doing. I mean, it's not something that they can say, oh, well, no, they could say, I'm not going to be your doctor, but somebody will be your doctor and accept that you've chosen that type of health care for yourself. Yeah. Somebody will.
I think nowadays as well, that if a doctor or a physician was to respond in that manner to say, I'm not going to be your doctor because you're choosing cannabis, I think it would look very bad on them now because information is so widely available that they would seem very almost caveman-esque, you're way back in the day.
Well, and I'll tell you what, that's interesting that you said so much information available. Where would you say the best information is for a doctor to quickly access?
A patient, if they were able to speak to one, but
and that's what we need to kind of change too in the industry. We need to make sure that there's others doctors that have applied this, that have been doing some research with it, that are bringing their stuff forward so that doctors can log on, look at case studies, look at applications for specific health conditions and go, okay, I can understand now why you've chosen this, because I see the same research that you've been looking up as a patient and brought forward. I can see it, and it's medically being applied. It's not something you've just thought was good for yourself.
Yeah.
And so right now our patients are basically the ones that are informing doctors. You're completely right. But it needs to be the industry coming forward and helping these doctors be educated, you know, helping our doctors educate families. So again, that's part of Cannabis for Children. That's what we're here for. We're trying to open up that communication, put the doctors, put the patients, put universities and school systems all on the same page, because these products are here. They're all over the internet. They're all over our shelves. You know, people are talking about them. Let's give some validation to it now.
That is tremendous that you're doing that unity element, Alissa, because that's what's necessary. As you've mentioned, there's such a diverse spectrum of industry that even, and I use industry in the context even of medicinal industry, really, that you have the need now is so great that you need to have a unity element. And recently in the UK, they've recently been the Cannabis Industry Council recently been formed, which is attempting to do the same thing, where they're bringing all the different forms of business, industry, and the medical sector, politics under the same umbrella, the same go-to one. You know, it's like you go to one door to speak to one through the government kind of thing, you know, and it's just, this is what's needed. Just instead of this very diverse element of this broken industry, that's what it looks like. You're dealing with hemp, CBD, medicinal, and then recreational. And then you've got patients at the back, and then you've got people who are claiming to be activists who are also patients. It's like, this is a mess. There needs to be a unity element amongst us all.
Right. You got people with the big signs down with big pharma. And like I'm saying, no, let's all work together. This is our healthcare. These are our families. I mean, if you get someone with an illness that needs a pharmaceutical, you're going to thank God that they're there.
Yeah.
We just need to make sure that our healthcare is valid. And part of that is recognizing cannabis care. Part of that is saying it's okay that you're using cannabis care, you know, and if there are risk factors, identify them. Again, we can kind of circle back just a little bit on that quality of cannabis care, because is our soil that these plants are being grown in well? Are the fertilizers a good fertilizer for our consumptions? You know, are the pesticides and herbicides reduced? Can we see this? Us as patients, as consumers, want to know these things. We don't want to be in the background going, okay, let's just push it forward, whatever it takes. No, we want some quality. We want quality control and quality assurances, because, you know, here in the United States, we have specific states right now that can have up to, like, I think 10 to 20 plants of their own for medicinal care. Boy, I'm not in one of those states. Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? You know, I can have chickens. I'm looking at my chickens, but I can't have cannabis. Nonetheless, wouldn't it be wonderful for people then to know, hey, this is the soil I use. This is the fertilizer and how I fertilize my plants. They'll know everything about it. But right now, it's not going to be that way for a long, long time, where people can just grow it and not fear the legalization being in play.
I'm really hoping that within 15 years that the ability to actually track, because all it keeps popping to mind, because you actually have one on your website as an app, and that's what keeps popping to mind, that you have this app or some form of piece of technology that's able to accumulate this data so that the consumer is able to essentially, it's like that thing where you can just scan through on Amazon, but you're actually scanning through different varieties of cannabis. You can go into the ingredients, you can go into the you know, agricultural elements and all these different things. Right. It feels like that's where this is going.
Yeah, it's like, where did this product come from seed to sale? We want to see all these processes kind of in place, because that gives us quality assurance. When we can go back and go, oh, was there a problem with batch number XYZ? Well, where is it coming from? And know more about it, instead of just reading an article in some publication about it, because that's not doing us any good. That comes and goes, and we really, like I said, need to validate the industry. And the more we can show that quality controls and quality assurance is in place for the patients, then the more valid we can make it. You know, the patients are the people.
Yeah, what are the current barriers then, Alissa, that you're facing at this moment in time? Just, I mean, obviously, federally, did you not pass a draft bill that may imply that might become more available next year or something? Is that correct?
Well, and I'll tell you what I've heard is there's discussions there in Congress and so forth, the Senates and so forth, of bringing forth medicinal care with cannabis across the United States. So basically taking it off the Schedule 1, the narcotic registration finally. And they're looking at maybe April. There's rumors, just rumors, and I'll say that of it being on 420 for humor's sake. So yeah, I see you're smiling. So, but I don't know that that's true. I don't know if that's just someone in the seats chuckling or not. But sometime around April,
that'd be highly appropriate. Excuse the pun.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, whoever thought of possibly bringing it out for that date is incredible. But that's what I'm understanding now, is that it's going to be taken off the Schedule 1 so that it can be medicinally applied. And I'll tell you where we stand at Cannabis for Children. There's no difference between medicinal and recreational other than the purpose of consumption, because it all affects the human body. And it doesn't really matter if you've done it because it makes you happy or you've done it because you're hurting real bad. It's just the same effect to the human body. But nonetheless, next year when they take that off, it'll just be medicinal. So then I guess the states will get to decide whether they allow recreational or not, on their own. So it's still really divided. But nonetheless, these patients that have been sitting there, like I have a family in Tennessee with the Dravet Syndrome. And Dravet Syndrome, I don't know if you know of it, but it's just multiple seizures. On a good day, Jasmine can have 3. And I'm an epileptic as well. So if I had 3 seizures, I know I'd feel rough. But on a bad day, she's, 10 and had 3 rescue meds. And this is her everyday life, every day. So right now, Tennessee doesn't allow cannabis in medicinal care or anything. So now, as soon as that's open, Jasmine can go and get this type of treatment and get tracked by her doctors and be on that same page. And it's really, I'm praying that this is more than a rumor and that we see it come forward next April.
In the UK, that's actually Dravet syndrome, unless I'm mistaken, is one of the main syndromes that really pushed for the change in medicinal legislation in the UK. So in 2018, that they did that. There was a few high-profile cases throughout the year, and then in June of 2018, there was a bill constructed that then allowed a small number, I think 3 or 4 children, to access medicinal cannabis through the NHS. But unfortunately, because of the panel that was created, a specialist panel specifically for this application, it was disbanded immediately. So even though the law was changed in 2018, the panel that was necessary to give expert guidance on who could then receive medicine was no longer available because it wasn't even there. So then what's been led since then is just this continuous hurdles over the past few years of people trying, putting through the applications and getting failed because GPs aren't willing to apply it because there's not a specialist reference, essentially. And then you've also got the difficulty with the GPs that actually can apply medicinal cannabis in the UK have to be part of the I think it's the General Medical Registrar, I think that, which have like over 100 GPs that are part of it. So again, you're narrowing over the course of the entire UK. If you've got less than 100, you're then dealing with regionally. Maybe in your local region, you might have 1 doctor, and the ability to see a doctor regularly, that's not sustainable, really, the amount of people that's there. So there's all these hurdles that seem to be relatively international. It seems like you're dealing with the same situation in the States.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. The access to the accountability, is not there. And we need the access to the accountability. And there are people willing to step up and be accountable. Now, I don't want to go into politics too much because, again, that's an all day or all week subject. I don't know what that is.
Well, some viewers falling asleep at the side.
Yeah. I'll have to get another cup of tea for that. But as far as politics, we need that representation of this. The accountability can be there when we're allowed to represent it. And our governments need to allow us to represent accountability. To not allow us to do that is keeping it in a black market state, in a hush state. And that's not what we intend to do anymore. We intend to fully bring it out, fully bring it into our medical systems, into our hospitals, into our clinics. We want doctors to talk about it. We want to identify the products that are bringing the best quality of care forward. Yeah. We want those standards of account. And like you said, track it down. We want to know where it comes from, how it's grown, what's being used with it.
Yeah.
And our government can say, okay, let's make this an accountable industry. At any given time, any government across the world can say, it's okay, we're going to make it an industry now.
Yeah.
Canada's done really well. Canada is growing, and now I've actually sat in a conversation with some communications about possibly adding cannabis care into the health insurance.
Right.
And, so health insurance companies looking at covering these cannabis products would be wonderful for families.
That would be tremendous. That would be a huge step forward.
So we're looking at this progression, but again, our governments have to allow us to progress, have to allow us to have this accountable business industry that's working with families, with physicians, with the pharmaceutical industry. We want it to be in motion together.
Yeah.
And I think we can do this. I think we can, but we all have to somehow come together in that open communication and allow it to be that way.
Yeah.
So we've got a lot of work to do.
You've actually got a great quote, Alissa, on the website where you've, if I'll just read that here, it's we must challenge our medical researchers and our governments to provide us with honest information about cannabis-related medicines, its risks and benefits. We should not create any division of humanity as we gain an understanding of cannabis treatments. Now, the fact that that last statement there, we should not create any division of humanity as we gain an understanding of cannabis treatments, all that makes me think is the amount of debate that goes on about the level of medical applicability of cannabis, and is it recreational, is it medical? That's a division immediately.
Yes, it is. And there's no necessary application for that. If we look at common sense and logic, let's just call it that it's applied to our bodies.
Yeah.
It's our healthcare. Whether, like we said, we do it recreationally or not, that's regardless. Same thing with alcohol affects our bodies, and we don't say, oh, we drink alcohol recreationally and medicinally. We just say, we know alcohol affects our bodies, and this how it affects it, and this is what you can expect from it. And we're very clear with that now.
Yeah.
So we can clear up this confusion with cannabis as well.
It would be tremendous if they actually put the talk of cannabis and the consumption of cannabinoids into a dietary supplement category. Then if that was the conversation where it was a case of even smoking cannabis was based on a units of cannabinoid nutrition element, and how you can get your vitamin C that day. Well, your cannabinoids, it could be the same method,
Yes. And I'll tell you, I had someone that had made some assumption of me when I had said I'd been around the cannabis community for 40 plus years. They said, oh, well, you've just been smoking for 40 years. And I said, how would you assume that? There's many years I didn't. It doesn't mean I didn't know people who were, It's just, that's part of a community there, I guess, what you call a community. It was school teachers. It was a lot of different people that, just couldn't speak of it. And they're very professional, held jobs, families, homes, all those things that you're not supposed to be able to achieve if you've consumed cannabis, but they were doing really well. And, those edibles, coming back to edibles, are wonderful applications to cannabis care when properly made. Again, when we're looking at good ingredients and so forth, for people who can't be around any type of smoke or inhalation, things like that.
Yeah.
We're looking at those vaporizers or vapors that have come out. At first, when they first came out, they had quite a bit of lead exposure to them. So we had put up a warning about those lead exposures, but now we're looking at a cleaner system. And so again, we want to know the science behind it. We want to know that it's cooperative with our governments and with our healthcare systems. We, the patients, want to know that everybody's on the same page.
Yeah.
Even
right? Your rooster agrees there. That's good. Even on your website, you even have more of a eco-sustainable approach. But one of the things we were talking about the CBD are the droppers, where you're promoting more of a eco-sustainable alternative for material opposed to the glass that's currently used.
Yes. And so we have hemp plastics, we have hempcretes. When I go industrial with hemp, it's beautiful clothing, just so many wonderful applications. And then we look at, there's jobs, there's business, there's work, there's industry. We need the cooperation again of our governments. to allow us to fully develop those types of opportunities, because they are there and they are valid. So yeah, if we could do eco-friendly everything, I would be so excited. As I look around at the areas used for dumps for trash and what's filled up with our hard plastics and things that don't break down for so long, and we can do so much better for our environment by applying hemp and allowing that to be an open industry as well.
Yeah. It certainly seems to be that the elephant in the room is education for the public. That's what it seems to be. If the public's more educated about all these diverse applications of cannabis, the hemp basis, the medicinal basis in particular, I think there'll be a much more greater push for government action. One of the great things as well that you've been, you have a book, the Cannabis for Children book, which provides like an introduction for people that are actually going to use cannabis medically. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. It's just a short book, 14 pages, but it goes over applying that cannabis care. And again, we look at that condition of burnout, not to burn out. Yeah. So we find activities, whether it's drawing, whether it's music, going places. We look at the diet and remind them, it's important that we eat the healthy vegetables and fruits and keep a good diet going. And we also in the book state that cannabis care might not be the answer, that there might be something else that the doctor thinks would be better. Yeah. And the reason we do this is because we want it to be cooperative care with the doctor. If a doctor identifies a certain illness or condition that needs treated, we don't want someone to think that the cannabis is the treatment. It might be there to mitigate the symptoms, but it's not going to necessarily be a treatment. So we've got to approach it very, very cautiously when we give a book out that says Cannabis for Children. Yeah. We want it to, like I said, be that cooperative care with the physicians and with accountability for making sure that holistic health is looked at, diet and rest and activities. Yeah. So
I think it's quite pertinent, actually, that cannabis causes homeostasis, because essentially that's what you're describing here, Lisa, is the multivariate situation towards individuals' health, and then with it being homeostasis being the overall objective.
Right. And so it's, and again, I reached out to Raphael Michelin to get a joint statement with him, because I had a lot of people reaching out and, how does cannabis work? How's it? And so the closest I can come, and he has collaborated and cooperated with this statement, but the human endocannabinoid system is developed much like a snowflake is developed. Each one is very individual in development. There's many factors that affect that development, metabolism, hereditary factors, dietary factors. So as that develops into the body, each one of us are individual, kind of like DNA. If you die somewhere and I die somewhere, they're going to be able to dig that up and look at the molecules and go, oh, that's Connor, that's Alissa. They'll figure out who we are. So that's the endocannabinoid system in each person as well. And the way these cannabinoids are adapting into the endocannabinoid system is equal to that snowflake formation. So based on how your endocannabinoid system is functioning and developed is how these cannabinoids are going to adapt to you. Each one's individual, like a snowflake, like you are and I am. I could consume some cannabis, you can consume some cannabis. What it's doing in your endocannabinoid system is very unique to you, and it's very unique to me. So it's not a one size fits all. And I know the industry hates when I say that. Oh, they're like, we want one product that fixes everything and takes care of everybody. And we've got the CBD that's going to change the world. And that's not how this plant and these molecules function. They don't function one size fits all. And we might find people who are having one strain, of cannabis that's working particularly good for a particular illness or condition. We need to identify these things, and say, hey, we're finding that this, whatever we want to call this plant is working well with this condition. Now we can start to validate it more. Yeah. So again, this one size fits all. Like I said, I wish I could tell everybody they're going to get healed with cannabis. It's going to fix them all up.
Yeah.
But there's very unique factors. Our medical healthcare system can look at this closer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, our pharmaceutical companies can look at this closer. They can do the research, you know, and find out how these cannabinoids are adapting based on these particular strains, particular, you know, products. So
I think the personalization of medicine is going to be an absolute revolution. And I think cannabis is going to play a huge role in that. And you touched on it perfectly there, Lisa, with the multivariate element of the endocannabinoid system, and then even the interaction of the phytocannabinoids for the individual. Endocannabinoids, again, based on the endocannabinoid system. But one of the interesting things is, again, it seems to be kind of popping up in recent research, is the importance of metabolic enzymes that they play in the regulation of all the endogenous cannabinoids. And this rabbit hole of impact as we continuously delve down, you know, it's so interesting, really.
It is, and that metabolism plays a big part. You know, that's how your body's absorbing things and processing it, and everybody's metabolism is based on their own individuality. And so again, you know, having that accountability for one's own health, or understanding that individual health is where the focus needs to be. We can take this on a platform one-to-one with our doctor, as a patient to doctor, and the doctor can validate what we're doing for our own care.
There's actually been one of the issues that's been happening in the UK recently, is the individuals that can't get it through their through the NHS channels have been getting it through private, and because they've attempted to, in many cases this has been successful, but in many cases again it's not, because there's been a breakdown in communication, but there's not been a transfer over of patient information. So there's not been a shared care. There's not. So you have your private physician, and then you have the NHS physician, and these people aren't communicating with the same patient. That's outdated.
And that's what we have here in Ohio. You have to go to a specific physician, and again, they're not sharing that information. It's almost like a clinic that you go to get your card for your cannabis care, but then you go to your regular doctor and tell them that you went to the clinic, and that's about all the more it is. And it's like that's you know, and honestly, when I went to the clinic, I started talking to the doctor, and she looked like she was a deer in the headlights. I think I gave her way too much information about my applications and why and history of it. So she was pretty dumbfounded, but she signed the paperwork and let me walk out.
One of the things I've noticed most when I've shared the same experience, Alyssa, when you go into the doctors and you inform them about the endocannabinoid system, there's a mixture of expression on their face often I see is one of like overwhelmed with information. There's another relative depressed look of, how do I not know this? I should be aware of this stuff.
Yeah. And we've had doctors, again, you know, we want to network with the patients, the doctors, the universities, but we've had doctors reach out and say, I'm working at this hospital and we have these patients and I want to treat them, and, you know, I let them have this cannabis care for these seizures, for these circumstances, and I can't, I'll be fired.
Yeah.
You know, it's just heartbreaking. And again, if we could all cooperate to say, let's validate what's been happening anyways, what's been happening with these black market transactions, let's bring it forward and validate the industry and make it quality control for the patients and make it, you know, financially beneficial. I mean, it's there waiting for us to do that as an industry.
I think there's been an article recently when it was saying the same thing there, Alyssa, when it said the basis of encouraging more accessibility for medicinal cannabis without legalizing recreational cannabis can cause a potential influence on medical grade that what's available. So you're getting a lot of black market cannabis that's getting washed into the medical side because of the fact that they've moved forward with medical cannabis legislation whilst holding back adult use legislation, which has inevitably diluted the medical stream of cannabis with black market product.
Oh, yeah. And, you know, already here in Ohio, I mean, we've been legal for a few years, but we have those products from these dispensaries on the streets. It didn't take long to hit the streets and become available black market. Yeah. So, you know, why aren't we validating this more, that we could bring forward the education? We could allow the children to communicate. We can put safety in place. It's so restrained right now, and it's unnecessary, and it's not even applicable anymore.
Thank you very much for joining me here, Alyssa. This has been brilliant. Is there anything you'd like to add before we get going?
Well, I will let you know that Cannabis for Children International does have a friends and family group, a support group that we offer on the Facebook. If anyone is interested in joining, we just share families there that are going through many different health conditions, and we find support for one another emotionally. And it's a wonderful group for everyone. Cannabis for Children does welcome any physicians and universities as well to come and join us on this mission of safety awareness, to bring education forward, to help us communicate better. We'd like to see this grow in the pharmaceutical industry as well. So we welcome the whole healthcare industry to be part of the cannabis industry and to work cooperatively, that we can bring forward the best for patients, that we can bring the best forward in the industry as well for our environment. So we look forward to networking with everyone.
Thanks to Alissa for giving me her time, and thanks to you for sticking around until the end of the video. I sincerely hope you enjoyed the content. I'll see you next time.